Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Wantrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofermento, and there's quite a few things that we have already been talking about here in the new year. We're talking about luxury brands and experiences. We're talking about AI as a disruptive force, and I would argue that all of these things point us in one direction, and that direction is that the more personalized you can get, the more high touch and concierge that you can get in your business, the more you're going to stand out in a world where everybody is just trying to rely on AI for the solution. And today's entrepreneur is doing such cool work when it comes to technology, when it comes to personalization and communication in our businesses, which applies to every single one of us. And she's applying a tool, a technology that all of us have in our pockets, and that is the power of WhatsApp that lives on our phones. So let me tell you all about today's guest. Her name is Teresa Overskei. She has over 20 years of experience when it comes to tech strategy, operations, and finance. She has worked for some of the biggest brands, worked for and with some of the biggest brands in the world, including WhatsApp themselves, Meta, Morgan Stanley, Harvard, and Yale. Most recently, she's been building business products for communication over WhatsApp, which we're going to talk about that solution here in today's episode. She's also a citizen of the world. She's lived and worked in Tokyo, in Paris, and London for half of her career. She's now broadcasting to us from New York City today, but we're going to hear about her incredible company, Coral Messaging, where if you want to get personal with your prospects, with your clients, with your customers, then we're going to talk about how to make that happen. So I'm not going to say anything else. Let's dive straight into my interview with Teresa Overskei. All right, Teresa, I'm so excited to have you here on the show with us. First things first, welcome to the show.
Thanks. It's great to be here.
Heck yes, you have such a cool background, and I love how one thing has seemed to lead to another in all the things that you're doing today. So take us beyond the bio. Who's Teresa? How'd you start doing all these cool things?
Let's see. I've been working for 20 years, mostly in a very corporate jobs. And to be honest, I kind of just followed my nose, and it led me down some really interesting paths. In the very beginning, I was doing corporate strategy, and then I moved to Tokyo to do some asset management work, so in finance. And that driver was really just to be in Tokyo, right? And the job was a vehicle to get me to Tokyo. Went to business school, then went back into finance, into some more serious finance, investment banking, did in London. Found myself covering tech companies as an investment banker. And that led me to then make the hop from financial advisory as an investment banker into a tech company itself. So I went in and then did corporate development and operations at a Paris-based tech company called Dizer. It's just like Spotify, so it's music streaming. And then I found myself in the tech world with that. So ended up going back to Meta and working at headquarters there, back to the mothership. I wanted to really work in a big tech company and see how things are supposed to be run at one of the biggest and most successful tech companies in the world. Found myself working on WhatsApp, kind of just stumbled into it, had an opportunity and saw that WhatsApp was a product that I'd used a lot, so I was passionate about it. And it also just looked like a lot of great growth and work to be done there. So I took the opportunity and then spent most of those years while I was at Meta at WhatsApp. Learned a lot about WhatsApp and about early stage businesses because we were effectively a startup within Meta. I was working in the WhatsApp business products division and took all those learnings. And then not long after I left Meta, started a company myself that is a B2B SaaS company related to WhatsApp. So took all those WhatsApp learnings and I'm applying them now.
Yes, I love that. Teresa, Tokyo is so on my travel bucket list for this year, and I feel like you just gave me another added push to make it that way throughout this year. But I'm so excited because part of your experience, of course, in living abroad is inevitably WhatsApp becomes your primary form of communication. It's something that I've been exposed to on my travels. I feel like we underestimate the way and the extent to which it can be used for business. I see it anytime I'm in a foreign country. It's so cool. You can direct message the company and ask them questions about hours or what they have, all of that. Talk to us about that power of WhatsApp for a lot of business owners who probably overlook it, especially if we're only operating in that lens of life here in the US.
Yeah, everything you said is very true. And I was working at the WhatsApp Business Products division, so I was seeing it all firsthand from the beginning. And WhatsApp started making these business products around 2018, which is when I started working on it while I was at Meta. And it's true. It is, in a lot of countries, it's the internet. WhatsApp is. A lot of businesses don't have a web page. They have a WhatsApp profile. And so that's the way that people discover them and talk with them as a business. And it's amazing. I think there's about 100 million businesses in the world right now using WhatsApp to talk with their customers. And of course, WhatsApp is a peer-to-peer consumer private messaging network, is 2 point something, or getting close to 3 billion active users globally. So businesses have really tapped into that. They see where the customers are, and they want to be messaging them where their customers already are.
Yeah, that's incredible. 100 million businesses. That is a wild stat to be introduced here today. Probably, Teresa, a lot of people are thinking, I don't even know what I would message with my customers. Like, I've never had a direct line of communication to them. Sure, a lot of businesses have a website and a contact form, which is so impersonal. Talk to us about some of those use cases. Why do businesses interact with customers or potential customers via WhatsApp?
Yeah, well, most businesses get their feet wet in customer service, and that's also tends to be most customers' first exposure to how and why they would talk with a business over WhatsApp. So it's just like emailing with a business, just like using their web chat application. If you have to go to their website, log in, and then use web chat. All the same idea, except you're just doing it over WhatsApp. So you don't need to log into anything. You don't need to go to a website. You can just use the app that you're on your phone on every day to talk with the business.
Yeah, and what's the workflow look like to support that? That's what I've always wondered. When I'm messaging these companies, who's on the other side? Is it the owner? Is it a staff member?
Yeah. So for small and mid-sized businesses, there's kind of a supercharged consumer app that they tend to use. It has just a few more features and tools than the WhatsApp consumer app that we all use has. But the real power comes with WhatsApp's APIs, and that's really meant for enterprises, much bigger businesses who need some customizations and need to really talk to their customers at scale. And they need to plug in that functionality to Zendesk or to their customer service tools that are all multi-channel, and WhatsApp is just one of many channels that they talk with their customers on. And eventually, so I mentioned customer service tends to be the first place where customers and businesses get exposed to this, but eventually, when consumers get comfortable with it, then businesses also end up doing sales over WhatsApp and marketing over WhatsApp. And we've seen that happen starting years ago in a lot of very highly penetrated countries for WhatsApp, like India and Brazil, and Asia a lot as well. It's often called conversational commerce.
Yeah, Teresa, you're dropping some really technical insights here, and obviously you have a deep understanding of the WhatsApp product, but obviously that also segues perfectly into what you're doing with Coral Messaging, because hearing about APIs, hearing about how this plugs into our business operations, and having just seen your website, the different niches that you've also identified, talk to us about Coral Messaging, because it seems like you've got a bit of an unfair advantage taking all that experience of yours into your own venture. What's that look like? What's the mission? What is it that you're rolling out to help other businesses grow?
Yeah, so myself and my co-founder both met and worked together at WhatsApp. And while we were there working on the API, businesses would come to us in a few industries, mostly financial services and luxury retail, asking WhatsApp to build certain things and tools that they wanted because their employees were talking to their customers over WhatsApp already. And they were just using the consumer WhatsApp, the one that you and I use every day. And that was a problem for businesses because they couldn't see anything that was happening. And that's bad for financial services because they get fined by regulators for not being able to see that. And it's also bad just for pretty much all other industries in the world because they really want to own their customers and see the interactions with their customers, and they're blind to that if it's all happening over the consumer WhatsApp app. So when WhatsApp released some new functionality that allowed an API to kind of see those chats and be part of those chats, kind of like a fly on the wall in the background, we jumped at the chance to be a company that builds the application layer on top of that API. And that's what we're doing. So our product released in October, And so far, we have a few clients onboarded and a lot of interest from financial services and luxury retail because of those reasons. All those years ago when I was at WhatsApp, and companies like that were coming to us asking for it.
Yeah, I love that overview, especially because you introduced a topic that probably most entrepreneurs overlook. And I love marketing, and I love the concept of ownership. What are those platforms and those channels that we own? We always hear about, the money is in the list. And for a lot of people, that means the stereotypical email list that we all use. But a lot of people, their list is their social media, and they are at the mercy of Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and everyone changing those algorithms. And all of a sudden, I can't reach those people anymore. That's the beauty to me of email, of SMS, of WhatsApp, is it's that direct line of communication. Talk to us about those ownership considerations, because a lot of people are building platforms on channels that aren't theirs. What is it about WhatsApp that enables us to retain those conversations and foster those relationships?
Yeah, well, it's a very highly engaged platform and audience. So if you look at the stats, the open rate and view rate of messages over WhatsApp is just much higher than email and SMS. So right there, it's just a really engaged audience. And you talked about ownership a little bit. So we're targeting businesses that already have these people as customers. So it tends to be what we call a relationship selling use case. So think wealth managers, private bankers, investment bankers in finance. They have ongoing conversations with clients and relationships that last years sometimes. Same goes for luxury retail. And so these are already people that have purchased products from these companies. They're already customers of these companies, but it tends to be a relationship with a lot of recurring sales. And so that's why the company in some sense already has them as customers and owns them, but they're just so blind to what they're asking for and how their relationship with their brand or company is building and evolving. Yeah. So we're opening that up to people a little bit.
You use the word recurring. And so when I think about WhatsApp, I do think of it as a highly personalized channel because it's direct messaging back and forth, one-to-one, not one-to-many. With the recurring aspect in mind, I think about, I'm going to call out real estate agents. That's who I'm going to use as the example in today's episode. Realtors seem like they're really good, Teresa, at having those touch points with their prospective customers, with their existing customers. My parents, for example, bought a house here in Florida a few years ago, and their realtor is really great on every birthday being like, hey, happy birthday. If you want to sell your house, I'm here. If you want to get a new house, what sort of recurring, how can we enhance those relationships through WhatsApp? Is that something that is similar to what realtors are doing? Is it built in? Is it something they can program through a SaaS company like yours? I'd love to hear those insights.
Yeah. It's so funny you bring that up. You were spot on. So I didn't mention real estate brokers before, but we've talked to them a lot, and they seem like they're great candidates for a product like ours as well. Because indeed, they tell us that about 90% of their work is through referrals, and that's how they get new clients. And so a lot of their job is just maintaining those relationships over time after a sale. And they do send messages on birthdays, and that's part of what they need to do to maintain that relationship. And most of those conversations and relationship building happens over messaging channels. And if you're not in the US, it tends to happen over WhatsApp. So our product kind of loops in to those one-on-one conversations, those relationships that have built over time, and is basically a virtual assistant to the real estate broker or to the private banker or the wealth manager or the luxury fashion advisor, what have you. And it first and foremost, we're just a third phone number in the chat that can just see everything happening in the chat, which can then be helpful to that salesperson, that real estate broker in the background. It can archive all the content, save it down, let the company, the parent company, see it all, and so they can understand their best customers. But once that virtual assistant is in the chat, it can also then do automations based on chat content it's seeing. So if they see that a task needs to get done, say the real estate agent needs to put some information in their CRM system about this buyer, then it can go do it for them and save them that hassle and that time. And then kind of the last level is that virtual assistant can also say things into the chat, which then would harness generative AI. And that can also help the seller build those relationships. It can the virtual assistant can put in more kind of generic content announcements And then that saves the seller needing to do that work. And then the seller can just be themselves. They're like the person who's actually the name and their phone number, and they're not sending that generic content, but they're riffing off of it. Like maybe the client will get a corporate event invite sent into that employee client chat, and the employee can say, hey, I'll be there, like let's get a drink before this event. So it kind of merges all of those worlds, any communication that a client is getting from a company or a brand in one place, and lets that seller, that relationship holder with them, really represent the brand in its entirety and see everything that's going on with this client. And so it can just be one holistic place where the client builds that ongoing relationship with the company, the brand, and the person, the seller.
Yeah, that is very cool. Okay, I knew for sure we'd go into AI here in today's conversation, but hearing that third party, this virtual assistant in every single conversation, Teresa, when can I embed this into all of my iMessages? Because that sounds amazing. Along those lines, though, talk to us more about the impact of AI into all of this, because it is not only deepening those relationships, and also freeing us humans up to focus on other things, but like you said, it's also taking care of things for us. Talk to us about how AI is playing into all of this.
Yeah, agentic AI can do tasks in the background for people. I gave an example earlier, and like you said, frees up their time to really focus on the relationships and the person on the other side of the chat. And AI is a whole other space in of itself, and has been really growing quickly, as we probably all know if you're involved in the tech space. But it's interesting, it can go in the direction of making relationships more robotic and stale a little bit, but we're really trying to harness it to deepen relationships and really single out and isolate the more human contact that these industries have with their clients, and that no one wants to go away. Right? Like you don't hire a wealth manager in order to get messages and stock pick recommendations from a bot. You want to talk with a human. And so it frees them up to be able to give that more personalized advice without having to worry about all the other stuff that they need to do for their jobs.
Makes sense. I want to call this out because I think it's important in this conversation, because both you and I have kind of called out the regional tendencies when it comes to WhatsApp versus iMessage, especially here in the United States. What's that vision, though? Do you believe in the future of market penetration for WhatsApp here in the States, or are you looking at that more international clientele? I'm super curious to hear those predictions.
Yeah, we're starting internationally right now. Because WhatsApp, if you're a global company, WhatsApp is the top of your list of communication channels with your customers. But indeed, I think about these days, maybe a quarter or a third of U.S. citizens are regular users, people who live in the U.S., reside in the U.S., are regular users of WhatsApp. I think it's around 100 million people is what WhatsApp released lately. And it's, look, having worked at WhatsApp and worked at Meta, it's a really important thing for that company to continue penetrating the US. I mean, it's their home market. So anyone would care about that and want it. And it's also just a really large and important market, the largest and most important in the world. So I do think that penetration is going to continue. And just anecdotally, I see it happening all the time over these few years. There's just more and more people that I meet in the US who use WhatsApp every year. And eventually it'll get there, I think. And the tipping point will happen, and WhatsApp will be the most highly penetrated messaging app in the States. And then I think we'll really see it and feel it in the business products aspect, because then suddenly companies will realize this is the channel to reach customers at, instead of the fragmentation that we have today. And they'll go all in.
Yeah, I hope that you're right. The only time I recall Apple trying to have some sort of business application in iMessage, after you place an order at the Apple Store, you'll get like this gold verified badge in your iMessages, but it's one-way communication. You can't even reply to that. There's no human supporting it. Whereas, I mean, I think about when I went to Costa Rica, for example, the local corner store. It's not even a grocery store. You can direct message them and get a reply. And with WhatsApp's tools, even language isn't necessarily a barrier. It can translate on the fly. And so it's just so convenient. I think about that customer experience here in the US. We're a country that prides itself on customer experience. This is one way for us to get closer there. But Teresa, I want to ask you this, because a lot of people don't know what they don't know. And I imagine when you talk to these business owners, whether it's wealth managers, whether it's the luxury retail world, how many of them come to you saying, this is what I wish could happen in my client relations, versus you listening to their business problems, listening to their current state, and then you coming up with those solutions for them?
It's always a little bit of both, right? Because we can bring to the table what we know is possible in WhatsApp, and they don't know that, especially because WhatsApp's functionality is always evolving. So in that sense, we bring some ideas to the table, and based on functionality we know is there coming down the pipeline. And then they, of course, bring the knowledge of their day-to-day. Like, no one knows that better than them, right? So it's always important to listen very hard to that part of what they're telling you. Because ultimately that will help you narrow down the true problems that they have that your product can solve, and therefore determines if they'll use your product.
Yeah, it makes sense. I want to get inside that business mind, because I didn't humble brag for you earlier in today's episode and conversation, but you are obviously very smart. You've got the academic achievements to back it up, as well as the business experience. And I really want to pick on that part of your brain, because it seems to me like you've been so intentional about the way that not only you're setting Coral messaging up, but the way that you and your co-founder are rolling it out with regards to the niches that you've identified, and the way that you're implementing that technology with your existing clients with an eye on the future expansions that you have in mind. Talk to us about the formation of Coral messaging. How much strategy and intention went into the way that you're rolling out?
A good amount. I'm glad you asked. We spent a good few months validating the ideas with potential clients, people in the financial services and luxury retail world, and other industries too, right? And there's also a really strong signal from other industries. And at some point, you need to pick a path to focus on, because that will determine the features that you build. And you need to go with it while always keeping an open mind to all of the other industries and use cases that are coming your way. So I'll give you an example. It's early days for us right now, but we already have a few clients onboarded, and they're from a diversity of industries. Healthcare, payments, construction industry, and then also there is retail and financial services. And it's our job at this stage to be open to all these industries and how they might want to use our product, and to hear them and understand and assess the commonalities across industries and kind of see what takes off. Like, I think a lot of what you're doing is at a very early stage at a company is putting your ear to the pavement and seeing what happens, and just being hyper aware of what signals you're getting from the market and what's noise, and listening and figuring out how you can shape that into something coherent that does a good job at solving discrete problems across as many clients as you can.
Yeah, I love the way you've articulated that, Teresa, especially thinking about keeping our ears to the pavement. There's so many things that are changing so fast in all of our industries, and it sounds like you just fully take that on board. You say, yeah, we'll figure out a construction project. We'll find all those real life business applications. And then the other side of it that I would imagine is also keeping your finger on the pulse of what's changing tech-wise. I mean, you obviously had the behind the scenes look into the way that WhatsApp operated, having worked there yourself, but how do you stay on top of the future direction that those are all moving in? I feel like WhatsApp is constantly launching new features. Is that something that you're actively eyeing? Is it something that plays into the role that you guys play behind the scenes, because there's new API integrations all the time? How do you stay on top of all of these moving parts, Teresa?
Yeah. So we're an official WhatsApp partner. So we share information with them, and they share information with us, just as part of what we need to do for and with them as part of that partnership. So, and then outside of WhatsApp, there's so much going on in AI, and does touch on our business. And that, to be honest, I find just a lot more challenging because it's changing so fast. So I'm not sure that I'm doing a very good job at keeping up with the AI news right now and how it's evolving, but I'm doing my best through newsletters and former colleagues and people who are other startup founders who are deep in it right now too, and just kind of sharing information.
Yeah, Teresa, I always love in these conversations talking to you not only as a subject matter expert when it comes to WhatsApp and that personalized messaging with your clients, but also as one of us, also as a fellow entrepreneur. And I know that you've started your business with a fellow founder. So there's two of you who are behind the scenes at Coral Messaging as founders. What's that look like? How are you guys coordinating? How are you strategizing? Do you have separated roles of Teresa, you focus on this, Louis, you focus on this? What does that look like behind the scenes?
Yeah, we've found that our skill sets are pretty complementary to each other, which is great. So we do a lot of dividing and conquering, but we always come together when it comes to decisions or ideas or thoughts or how things are evolving, because it is so valuable. And my co-founder's name is Louis, and he has been excellent, and I can't imagine doing this without him. And we always come together to bounce ideas off of each other, discuss things, and it is so valuable to have that other mind in the conversation, especially someone who knows and understands WhatsApp so deeply. I can't imagine starting a company without a co-founder. There's just so many ways that you could get into your head and not have someone that truly understands what's going on to bounce ideas off of. So just so grateful to have him.
Yeah, for sure. And also the fact that both of you have that background in understanding the product so well, I'm sure a lot of people might think, well, you guys, everything is probably smooth sailing. It's easy to build on top of. You're already a WhatsApp verified partner, but I'm sure it also comes with some challenges and obstacles along the way. So Teresa, give us some of those insights. I mean, I'm sure that starting your business, you had an idea of what it's going to look like and how it's going to function, but what are some of those things that have surprised you immediately out of the gate?
Yeah. Early stage startups are delicate, and you forget that, especially if, like myself, I had mostly corporate jobs for the last 20 years where, there's infrastructure there for you. There's a recruiting team to help you hire people. There's, company events and kind of formalized like feedback to help keep employees and people informed on their progress and give them feedback. And just without all of those things in place, it's just very easy to lose someone, for example. And if this early stage, when if you're just a few employees, losing one person can really slow you down and be a big problem. So I've been surprised at how delicate things are sometimes, and it really is a challenge. And the other thing that we run into, which is kind of the price we pay for working with WhatsApp on such early functionality and getting such privileged access to it, is that WhatsApp's building their functionality too, that we're building our application on top of. So they're also at an early stage of building this. And so sometimes things don't work, or sometimes it's not fully staffed at WhatsApp. And so we're in this interesting position of, something doesn't work. We don't know if it's our product or their product. And we have to go figure that out with them. And like I said, kind of finding out all those bumps in the road about the platform upon which we're building is it's the price we pay for having the privilege of having such early access to this new functionality. So it's worth it. But it creates extra time.
Yeah, Teresa, I'll tell you what, it also reveals your attitude towards it, though, of rolling with the flow, because as you said, you use that word delicate. When we're starting any new venture, there's so many delicate parts of it. It makes me want to ask you this. I've really enjoyed asking more and more entrepreneurs this question, particularly this year, and that is about time horizon, how far out you're looking, because I feel like we're at such an incredible inflection point in time with the rise of AI. I mean, for us, we obviously saw the start of the internet when we were super young. And with that in mind, we are that generation that is also seeing AI as this inflection point. it makes it a little more difficult to look far out into the future, but it also makes it more fun to navigate all the rapidly changing environments. Are you and Louis looking 1 year out, 3 years out? Are you looking, I love quarters. That's like kind of where I work because I know what I can do in 90 days. What's that time horizon that the two of you strategize for?
Yeah, it tends to be, there's certainly a looking, 1 month or 1 quarter out for sure, because it's upon that basis that you have to make some decisions about what to build tomorrow and what to build next month. And then there is an aspect of it of looking a few years out, but we don't spend a ton of time on that. You can only spend time on that when it comes to bigger strategic decisions like choosing an industry or a market. But otherwise, I find that you just need to kind of put one foot in front of the other and focus on the here and now and in getting things done, because you can have some theses about where things are going to be in a few years, but because you don't really know if they're going to pan out and what the context is going to be, at some point you just got to go do things that is really based on what's right in front of you right now.
Yeah, I so appreciate that. That's the insight that you shared with us there, Teresa. It's something I'm hearing more and more behind closed doors. And I know that you and I both went to business school, and it's a little counter to what we learned back then, is that you have to have a 10-year plan, you have to do a SWOT analysis, all of this. But your real life insights and journeys, I think that this is the valuable stuff that we don't talk about often enough as entrepreneurs. So I love the insights you're giving us strategically with regards to WhatsApp and the industry that you're in and how you're helping clients. But I also love your entrepreneurial mind, and that's why this last question, it's super broad. You can take it in any direction you want, and that is, what's your best piece of advice? Knowing that we're being listened to by entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs at all different stages of their own growth journeys, what's that one thing that you want to leave them with today?
Yeah. So it ties into a little bit of what you said already, which is the being flexible and kind of living for the now a little bit. And I mentioned earlier in our talk when I first introduced myself that my career path has been a little bit of a following my nose. And I'll say that, in some companies you get, training or like the HR team, or it's just common wisdom to create a career vision and where do you want to be in a few years and what do you do now to work towards that. And I actually never really understood that. And I had trouble doing that, isolating what I wanted to be doing in a few years, because I just felt that I had no idea. And so my career path as a result has been, I've jumped around locations and industries a lot. And it's, as I described it earlier, I just kind of followed my nose and saw what was in front of me when I had to make a decision and picked a path that looked the most interesting. And that, didn't seem like it was going to close doors necessarily. And I really recommend that as a life view and perspective and a way to approach your career. It's not right for everyone, but I think what I'd love people to understand is that you also don't have to have the vision of what you want to be a few years from now and be working towards that. It is okay to not approach your career that way. There are other great ways of doing it. And I found a lot of success doing the opposite.
Yes, I love that advice, Teresa, especially because you're preaching to the choir here. I feel like this is one of those unique traits of all of us entrepreneurs, is that the standard, the traditional advice that everybody gives students and young professionals and people who are hungry and ambitious in their careers, we're told one set way of doing things, but we've bucked that trend, Teresa, and I love the fact that you're giving that advice and permission for all of our listeners here today to not have the answers. Follow your nose, as Teresa said. So Teresa, it has served you well. I'm so excited to see everything that Coral Messaging puts into the world and all the great businesses, not only that you're already helping, but that you're going to be helping into the future, and that you're part of that wave to bring this way of business and WhatsApp here to the United States marketplace. So drop those links on us. Where should listeners go from here?
Our website is coralmessaging.com. And you can find out a lot about our product there. And you can also contact us through an intake form on the Contact Us tab there, or feel free to just email me directly. My email is teresa@coralmessaging.com. It's TERESA@coralmessaging.com.
Yes.
And I'm happy to talk with you if you use WhatsApp for work.
I love that offer. Teresa, I was going to say, we're going to make sure that people can get in touch with you. Listeners, you already know the drill. We're dropping all those links down below in the show notes, no matter where it is that you're tuning into today's episode. You've seen how approachable Teresa is and how much she likes talking about this. This is, for so many business owners, this is a hugely untapped way to get in front of your customers, build those relationships on a really deep level. Even when we were talking about the happy birthday text messages, a text message you're going to reply to, a happy birthday email, you're just going to click archive because there's 30 other businesses doing exactly that. So Teresa, I'm a big fan of your work and how much you're injecting the personalization into the way we communicate with our customers and clients. So listeners, check out those links down below in the show notes. We're also linking to Teresa's personal LinkedIn. So if you want to continue the conversation there, I know that's an increasingly popular platform. So you'll find that down below as well. Teresa, on behalf of myself and all the listeners worldwide, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you, Brian, for having me.